All right, this will be video 2 for AP Euro for Monday, April 20th. Seeing that the situation in Egypt was doomed, Napoleon abandoned his army and rushed back to France, where he had received word the Directory was increasingly unstable. On 19 Brumaire, November of 1789, Napoleon joined the Abbé who were at the time one of the five directors, staged a coup d'état and overturned the Directory. Sieyès, who thought Napoleon could be controlled, established a new constitution with a powerful executive made up of 3 consuls, which included one of the sitting directors, Roger Ducos, and Sieyès and Napoleon as the other 2. 1 month after the coup, the politically ambitious Napoleon set up a new constitution with himself as first consul. The structure granted universal male suffrage to satisfy Republican sentiment, but left Napoleon firmly in control over the real workings of the state. Using a technique that he would find increasingly useful, Napoleon staged a plebiscite, a vote by the people, for his new constitution to show the popular support, and they passed it overwhelmingly. Napoleon attempted to end some of the bitterness that had arisen out of the revolution. A general amnesty was issued, and immigrants began to stream back into France, the royalist people who had left during the revolution. Since Napoleon only required the public servants to be loyal to him, he was able to use the talents of those Jacobins and monarchists who were willing to accept his dominance over the French estate. Napoleon treated those who were not willing with brutal cruelty. He established a secret police force to root out his opponents. Following a plot of his life, Napoleon purged the Jacobins, and he kidnapped and executed Bourbon Duke of Ingham, after falsely accusing the Duke of plotting against him. Napoleon recognized that a major problem during the course of the revolution was the ongoing hostility of French Catholics. He himself was not religious, but he recognized that religion could be a useful tool for maintaining political stability, and the church would continue to be important for many French people. In 1801, Napoleon created a concordat with Pope Pius VII. Basically, the settlement worked to benefit Napoleon. The concordat declared that Catholicism was the religion of the great majority of the French. The concordat did not, however, reestablish the Catholic Church as the official state religion, and remained tolerant towards Protestant and Jews. The papacy would select bishops, but only on the recommendation of the first consul. The state would pay clerical salaries, and all the clergy had to swear an oath supporting the state. In addition, the church gave up its claim to those lands confiscated during the revolution. The church was able to get Napoleon to do away with the calendar that had been established during the period of the Jacobin dominance, which the church particularly hated because it did away with the Sundays and religious holidays. Following a plebiscite in 1802 that made him the consul for life, Napoleon set out to reform the French legal system. The Civil Code of 1804, commonly known as the Napoleonic Code, provided for a single unitary legal system for all of France, rather than hundreds of localized codes that had been in existence under the monarchy. The code enshrined the equality of all people before the law and safeguarded the rights of property holders, reversing the advances made by women during the Revolution. The code reaffirmed the paternalistic nature of the French society. Women and children were legally dependent on their husbands and fathers. A woman could not sell or buy property without the approval of her husband or father, and divorce, while still legal, became much harder for women to obtain. In 1804, Napoleon decided to make himself emperor. Once again, he held a plebiscite as a means of trying to show popular support, and again his wishes were overwhelmingly affirmed by a vote. He invited the Pope to take part in the ceremony, which took place in Notre Dame rather than in Reims Cathedral, the traditional place where French kings had been crowned. During the point in the ceremony in which the point was about to place the crown on the emperor's head, Napoleon yanked it out from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head, and then took a second crown and placed it on the head of his wife. Napoleon wanted to make it clear that he was the emperor of France, not based on the will of God or through the ancient accident of his birth, but rather as a result of his weight of his own achievements. Napoleon also created a new aristocracy that was based on service to the state rather than his birth. Members of the new aristocracy did not enjoy any special privileges before the law, nor could their titles be passed on to their children. France at war with Europe. Constant warfare was a hallmark of the reign of Napoleon, though he was considered to be one of the geniuses of the history of warfare. In many ways, his greatest skill was in taking advantage of the certain developments that were taking place in 18th century warfare. In 1792, with the Levée en Masse, French armies became larger than their opponent forces, and Napoleon became masterful at moving these large armies to outmaneuver his opponents. In part, he could do this because he could trust his highly motivated citizen soldiers, unlike his opponents, who employed unreliable mercenaries who were given little independence on the battlefield for fear of their desertion. Napoleon certainly did not invent the new light artillery found in the 18th century, but he skillfully recognized that this new artillery could be fully integrated with his infantry and cavalry as a very effective fighting tool. Although Napoleon supposedly said that an army moves on its stomach, he did little to feed those stomachs. He encouraged his men to live off the land rather than using those costly time to provide adequate provisions through the maintenance of supply line, something that added to the great unpopularity of French occupying armies. Although France was officially at peace with Great Britain as a result of the Treaty of Amiens, Napoleon saw it only as a temporary measure, as he sought for the means to limit British influence. To antagonize the British, who had colonies in the Caribbean, he sent troops to Haiti, where a slave rebellion had created an independent republic, in an attempt to reestablish French control. For most of French troops died from disease. Napoleon turned his interest away from the colonies, even sold Louisiana Territory to the United States for the paltry sum of about $15 million. Napoleon refocused on Europe and readied his plans to invade England, but the powerful Royal Navy would have to be defeated. At the Battle of Trafalgar on October 21st, 1805, Admiral Nelson died in the struggle that ultimately destroyed the French fleet, without any hope of the French landing in England. On land, however, Napoleon was in his element. Following the formation of the Third Coalition, in which Austria, Russia joined Britain, Napoleon set out to first destroy the Austrians, a goal which he had achieved at the Battle of Ulm in October 1805. Then he won his greatest victory over Russian force at Austerlitz. Following these battles, Napoleon decided to abolish the Holy Roman Empire and create the Confederacy of the Rhine, a loose grouping of 16 German states that were placed under the influence of France. Ironically, just as in Italy, Napoleon's victories in Germany resulted in a redrawing of the map, although with long-term consequences not favorable to the French nation. When the Prussians had previously worked out a treaty with France, saw the extent of French control over German territories, they hastily joined the Third Coalition. To punish them, Napoleon quickly gathered his forces, and at the Battle of Jena, he obliterated the Prussian army and occupied the capital of Berlin. Following the complete collapse of the Prussian army, the Russian Tsar Alexander I decided that it was necessary to make peace with France. He met with Napoleon on a raft in the Niemen River. On July 7, 1807, the two monarchs signed the Treaty of Tilst, with the Prussian monarch eagerly awaiting on the shore to see what Alexander and Napoleon cast as the fate of the defeated kingdom. Because of the insistence of Alexander, Prussia was saved from extinction, but it was reduced to half its previous size and was forced to become an ally of France on its ongoing struggle against Great Britain. Seeing that he could not defeat the British Navy, Napoleon decided to wage economic war. He established the Continental System in an attempt to ban British goods from arriving on the continent. Rather than damaging Great Britain, however, the Continental System weakened the economies of those states that Napoleon had conquered and achieved little to advance French economic interests. The Continental System. The Continental System and resentment caused throughout Europe helped galvanize support against French rule. Initially, wherever French troops went, they brought with them the ideals of Enlightenment and French Revolution. French troops arriving in Venice broke down the walls of the ghetto where Jews had been forced to live since the High Middle Ages and established full religious toleration. They also brought about the end of social distinctions wherever they went and imposed the civil code as the basic rule of law. Despite this, the French were still occupiers, and as time went on, increasingly harsh ones. Napoleon placed his general worthless family on the various thrones of Europe, essentially as figureheads, because all the authority came from Paris. All right, we're going to look at the key concepts real quick. This is topic 5.5. So this is Unit 5 from the AP Euro Core Skybook, Napoleon's Rise, Dominance, and Defeat. Just read a little bit of this. As first consul and emperor, Napoleon undertook a number of enduring domestic reforms, while often curtailing some rights and manipulating popular impulses behind a facade of representative institutions. Napoleon's new military tactics allowed him to exert direct or indirect control over much of the European continent, spreading the ideals of the French Revolution across Europe. Napoleon's expanding empire created a nationalist responses throughout Europe, and that's probably where we're going to stop because that's pretty much what we covered today. All right, so y'all have a good day. I will resume talking